The evening sun cast its last red shimmer over the blackened plains of Silver Creek Reserve, where ash still floated like gray snow in the dry wind. The world smelled of burnt cedar and loss. Caleb Dawson, a 36-year-old wildlife veterinarian, moved slowly through the wreckage. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair streaked with dust, his jaw shadowed with 2 days of stubble. His hands, calloused and steady, bore the faint tremor of exhaustion. Caleb had once been a city vet in Denver, but after a devastating wildfire had killed dozens of animals at his clinic 5 years ago, he'd left everything behind. Since then, he'd worked in field rescues, chasing redemption one burned paw at a time. He carried a small tranquilizer rifle and a satchel of medical gear slung over his shoulder. Every few meters, he paused to listen. The silence of Silver Creek was unnatural. No chirps, no rustles, only the hiss of cooling embers. Then, faintly, he heard it. A cry, thin and trembling, like glass breaking in the wind. Caleb followed the sound to the edge of a dried lake bed. There, among the charred reeds, lay a doe. Lifeless, her eyes glazed toward a heaven that had turned its back. Two tiny fawns, their coats still speckled with white, huddled against her body. Their fragile legs quivered with every breath. One nudged its mother's neck, seeking warmth that had long since faded. Caleb's throat tightened. "Oh, sweetheart," he murmured. He knelt, his hand brushing the fawn's trembling flank. They were barely a week old. He knew the rules of nature. Orphans this young had no chance. Without milk, without protection, they'd be gone before dawn. He reached into his bag for a blanket, intending to carry them to his truck, when the wind shifted, and with it came a low, guttural sound. A growl. From behind the blackened brush emerged a leopard. Her body was lean and powerful, muscles rippling beneath a coat of gold and onyx rosettes. Her left ear was torn, an old wound, and one side of her face bore a faint scar. She moved with predatory grace, silent and certain. Caleb froze. He recognized her instantly. Lucy, the elusive female leopard he'd been tracking for months. He'd seen her from afar before the fire, a solitary hunter, unpredictable, cunning, and known to drag kills into trees for days. Her survival through the blaze was a miracle in itself. Now, her amber eyes locked on the fawns. Caleb raised his rifle halfway, torn between instinct and conscience. He'd witnessed death enough times to know what came next, but what he saw instead made him lower his weapon, his breath caught halfway in disbelief. Lucy didn't strike. She approached the fawns cautiously, head lowered, tail flicking in slow, measured arcs. The fawns froze, their thin bodies rigid with fear. Caleb's heart pounded. "Don't do it, Lucy. Please don't." But Lucy stopped a few feet away. She sniffed the air, then lowered her massive head until her whiskers brushed the smaller creatures. One of the fawns, or the braver one, took a shaky step forward, pressing its face into her neck. Lucy blinked, a slow, deliberate motion, and then, impossibly, she lay down. The fawns hesitated. Then they moved closer, curling against her belly as if they had known her forever. Caleb sank to his knees, disbelieving. The heat from the scorched earth rose around him, but a chill spread through his chest. "No one's ever going to believe this," he whispered. For the next hour, he stayed hidden behind a dead log, documenting every movement. Lucy's tail flicked protectively across the fawns' backs. Occasionally, she lifted her head to scan the horizon, her ears twitching at the smallest sound. She was alert, but calm, her breath even, her body language maternal. Caleb knew that this wasn't mere curiosity. Something deeper was happening. Perhaps the fire had taken her own cubs. Perhaps grief, like love, had no species boundary. He thought about the way she'd first appeared after the flames, thin, restless, her hunting patterns erratic. Maybe she had lost more than he'd realized. As dusk settled, the sky turned purple and gold, the kind of beauty that felt cruel after destruction. Caleb backed away quietly, not wanting to disturb the fragile miracle before him. His boots sank into soft ash. He stopped once more, glancing back. Lucy had raised her head and was watching him, not with hostility, but with a strange, weary calm. Their eyes met. For a fleeting moment, Caleb felt as if she saw right through him. His guilt, his fatigue, his yearning to believe that nature still held compassion somewhere beneath its teeth. He whispered softly, "Take care of them, Lucy." As he turned toward his truck, the fawns nestled deeper into her spotted warmth. Above them, smoke curled toward the bruised sky, and for the first time since the fire, Silver Creek felt alive again. 3 days had passed since the fire's embers faded, yet the ghost of smoke still lingered over Silver Creek. The once blackened fields now shimmered faintly green where new shoots dared to rise from the ash. Caleb Dawson sat in the shade of a half-burned acacia, his binoculars pressed to weary eyes. He had hardly slept. Every dawn he returned to the same ridge to watch the impossible unfold below. The leopard Lucy and her 2 fawns. Lucy moved with an elegance that defied the scars on her body. Her torn ear twitched at every buzz of a fly, her tail flicked with quiet authority. When the wind carried danger, she rose, shoulders rippling beneath her golden coat, a silent guardian of 2 creatures that should have been her prey. The fawns, one slightly larger and bolder, the other timid and pale, trailed behind her as if she had always been their mother. Caleb had named them Grace and Hollow. Grace was curious, stepping first toward every sound, while Hollow clung closer to Lucy's side, still trembling at shadows. Caleb jotted notes into his weathered field journal, his handwriting uneven. Day 3. Leopard continues maternal behavior, provides shade, brings soft vegetation for fawns to chew, no signs of aggression. He stopped and rubbed his temple. A faint smile flickered across his face, though fatigue and disbelief warred in his eyes. "Maybe she remembers something she's lost," he murmured. The sound of an engine broke the stillness. Caleb looked up to see a dust-covered jeep climbing the dirt road toward his observation post. The driver was a woman, Maya Collins, a field journalist from the Washington Post. She was in her late 20s, slender and sun-browned from months of travel across African reserves. Her chestnut hair was tied loosely under a khaki cap, and her eyes, gray and sharp as a hawk's, studied the landscape before settling on Caleb. She stepped out of the jeep with a camera slung around her neck, her movements brisk but careful, like someone used to earning respect in wild places. "You're the vet who called in the anomaly?" she asked, brushing dust off her shirt. Her voice carried the mix of curiosity and skepticism of someone who had seen too many fabricated miracles. Caleb nodded. "Anomaly's one word for it." He led her up the ridge, warning her to stay quiet. When she saw Lucy below, lying under a tree with the fawns nestled against her belly, Maya froze. Her lips parted, but no words came. The shutter of her camera clicked once, twice, then she lowered it slowly. This goes against everything we know," she whispered. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Don't turn it into another headline. She's not a story. She's a living creature holding on to something pure. Don't ruin it with noise." Maya glanced at him, surprised by the heat in his tone. "You've got a lot of faith for a scientist." "I lost enough faith once," he said, voice low. "This is the first time in years I've felt like the world still remembers how to heal itself." They spent the next hours observing in silence. Lucy occasionally left the fawns to stalk the nearby trees, returning not with meat but with berries and tender leaves, dropping them gently in front of the twins. Caleb's eyes filled with disbelief each time. "She's adapting," he said softly, "changing her instincts." At sunset, Lucy lay down again, and the fawns climbed atop her spotted back, nuzzling into her fur. Maya lowered her camera and exhaled shakily. I've covered wars, floods, famine, but I've never seen compassion like this, she said. It's like something divine crawled out of the ashes. Caleb nodded, but his gaze was fixed on Lucy's flank. She was breathing heavier than usual. She's malnourished, he said quietly. If she keeps giving energy to them, she'll starve. He made a note to leave food near the area, though he knew wild predators rarely accepted human charity. That night, Caleb and Maya camped on the ridge. The fire between them glowed faintly orange. Maya spoke of her childhood in Vermont. Her father, a forest ranger who taught her that nature had a soul. Her mother, who'd died young, leaving behind only a box of camera film and a quote, "Don't just take pictures of the world, listen to it." She said that was why she came to Africa. Caleb listened, then told her of the fire that destroyed his Denver clinic, of the animals he couldn't save, of the guilt that drove him into the wild. When he fell silent, the only sound left was the low hum of the savannah. In the pale light of dawn, Maya woke to a strange sound, soft bleating mixed with something deeper. She grabbed her camera and followed Caleb to the ridge. Below, Lucy stood in a patch of early sunlight, her head bowed as both fawns pressed close to her belly. Caleb gasped. "Look," he whispered. "She's nursing them." It was impossible, yet unmistakable. Lucy's body, once lean from hunger, had begun producing milk. Her maternal instincts had overridden the laws of nature. Maya's camera trembled in her hands as she recorded, tears welling in her eyes. "God must have sent her," she said hoarsely, "to show us what love looks like when it has no reason to exist." Caleb lowered his binoculars, staring at the sight before him as if witnessing a prayer answered. The world had burned, but something sacred had risen from the ashes. Not in temples or sermons, but in the heart of a leopard who remembered what it meant to care. Night had fallen thick and heavy over Silver Creek, the kind of darkness that swallowed even the sound of breath. The moon hung low and sharp like a blade, slicing through the canopy of half-burnt trees. From the observation post, Caleb Dawson stood with his arms crossed, gazing through binoculars toward the valley below. He could barely make out the faint, rhythmic breathing of the leopard Lucy, curled protectively around the fawn's Grayson Hollow. For days, they had become his quiet ritual, a vision of healing after the storm. But peace in the wild was always fragile, a heartbeat away from danger. Miles away, on a dirt road littered with beer cans and cigarette butts, Travis Boone tightened his grip on the steering wheel of a battered Land Cruiser. He was in his early 40s, tall and broad, with a square jaw roughened by dark stubble and deep creases from years of desert wind. His eyes, cold, gray, and narrow, carried the permanent squint of a man who trusted nothing but his rifle. Boone had once been a licensed game tracker, but years ago he lost that license after being caught trading tusks for cash. A short prison sentence and the death of his younger brother in a hunting accident had twisted him into something meaner. He'd convinced himself that predators deserved no mercy, that the world owed him for the life it had taken away. When the news broke about a leopard nurturing 2 fawns, Boone saw red. "A freak show," he muttered, spitting tobacco onto the dirt. "And that damn vet, Dawson, making me the villain." His hand brushed over the scar that ran from his temple to his neck, a gift from a leopard he'd once wounded but failed to kill. To him, this wasn't just about money. It was personal. He loaded his rifle, a custom Remington with a night scope and suppressor, and checked his thermal binoculars. Each click of metal echoed like thunder in the stillness. Tonight, he would reclaim his pride, and the world would see that no beast, no man, could make a fool of Travis Boone twice. Back at the reserve, Maya Collins sat near the campfire, typing notes on her weathered laptop, her face lit by the amber glow. The fatigue in her gray eyes couldn't hide the awe still lingering from the previous morning's discovery, Lucy nursing the fawns. She turned to Caleb, who was brewing coffee over a small pot. You realize this story will change how people see predators, she said softly. It's rewriting everything we thought we knew. Caleb didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted toward the ridge, the faint sound of insects buzzing through the cool night air. I just hope the world leaves her alone long enough for her to live the story, he murmured. Hours later, when the fire died down to embers, the forest changed. The wind grew sharp, carrying a metallic tang. Gun oil, perhaps, or death. Lucy stirred. Her golden eyes opened, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Somewhere beyond the hill, a shape moved, large, deliberate, human. Boone crouched in the tall grass, his breath fogging against the scope. Through the thermal lens, he saw the trio glowing in shades of white heat. The leopard, motionless except for the slow rise of her chest, and the fawns, nestled close. "Got you," he whispered. He adjusted his aim, finger resting on the trigger. The rifle coughed softly, a muffled shot slicing through the silence. Lucy jerked up, a snarl ripping from her throat. The bullet grazed her shoulder, tearing fur and skin. The fawns bolted behind her, bleeding in panic. Boone grinned, lining up for the second shot, but before he could squeeze the trigger, something slammed into him from behind. Caleb. The two men tumbled into the dirt, wrestling in the darkness. Boone swung the rifle like a club, catching Caleb's jaw, but the vet, driven by instinct and fury, grabbed Boone's wrist, forcing the barrel away. "You're done, Boone," he hissed. "You're not killing her." "Move, you idiot," Boone spat, shoving him back. "You think that monster loves them? She's playing nature's joke. She's still a killer." But as the men struggled, Lucy's roar split the night, so deep, so primal it froze Boone mid-motion. She stood atop the ridge, blood streaking her shoulder, eyes blazing like twin coals of judgment. Even Caleb, bruised and panting, felt the sound pierce straight through his chest. Lucy charged. Boone tried to raise his gun, but fear made his fingers clumsy. The leopard's shadow fell upon him before he could aim. She stopped just short of striking, planting herself between Boone and the fawns, growling low and steady. Her tail lashed the ground, dust rising in small clouds. Boone stumbled backward, falling hard, his weapon skittering into the grass. Moments later, the distant whine of engines grew louder, the reserve's ranger jeeps, lights cutting through the trees. Officer Samuel Trent, a stocky ranger with sun-creased skin and a trimmed gray beard, stepped out, pistol drawn. "Hands where I can see them, Boone," he barked. Within seconds, Boone was face down, wrists cuffed, his rage dissolving into curses swallowed by the night. As the rangers secured the area, Caleb knelt beside Lucy. Her breathing was shallow but steady, her fur matted with blood. "Easy, girl," he whispered. "You did good." The leopard blinked slowly, her eyes drifting toward the fawns now pressed against her flank. Even wounded, she stood guard. By the time the first light bled across the horizon, Boone was taken away, muttering threats no one cared to hear. Caleb sat near Lucy, exhaustion washing over him like the morning mist. Maya knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "She protected them," she said softly. Caleb nodded. "A mother doesn't need to be born one to become one." The first rains came quietly to Silver Creek, soft and patient, washing the last of the ash from the earth. For weeks, the land had lain still, scarred but stubborn. And now, tiny blades of grass pushed through the black soil like whispers of forgiveness. The charred trees bore new buds, and the air smelled of wet bark and rebirth. Caleb Dawson stood by the edge of a glimmering stream that had returned after the drought. His sleeves were rolled up, his hands stained with mud as he checked camera traps and set new sensors. The beard that had shadowed his face since the fire was now fuller, flecked with silver. There was something lighter in his eyes, a quiet peace that had not been there before. The wound on his jaw from his fight with Travis Boone had healed into a faint scar, the kind a man might carry as a reminder that redemption often bleeds before it blooms. Beside him, Maya Collins crouched with her camera, focusing on a patch of wild lilies that had somehow survived both flame and storm. The humidity had turned strands of her chestnut hair into curls that brushed against her cheeks. She was dressed in olive field gear, her face smudged with rain and dirt, yet her presence carried a calm confidence that made her seem at home among chaos. In the past month, she had stayed in Silver Creek, documenting its recovery, her heart tethered not to headlines, but to truth. "Do you think they're still out there?" she asked softly, not looking up from her lens. Caleb glanced toward the distant hills, where the forest shimmered green again. "Lucy's too smart to stay close to where humans gather. She'll move where the noise can't find her," he said. "But yes, she's out there. I feel it." Maya smiled faintly. "Faith disguised as science, huh?" He chuckled. Sometimes the two speak the same language. A rustle from the trees made them both turn. Through the mist came Officer Samuel Trent, the ranger who had arrested Boone. Today, without his uniform, he looked almost unrecognizable. A weathered man in his 50s, wearing a faded plaid shirt and carrying a metal lunchbox. His face was deeply lined, his gray beard neatly trimmed. "Morning, Doc," he greeted Caleb, his voice gravelly but warm. "Brought you some sandwiches. Figured you two would forget to eat again." Maya laughed, taking the lunchbox. "You're too kind, Sam. You keep feeding us like this. I might move here permanently." Trent's smile faded a little. "Could use more folks like you around, especially after what happened." His tone hinted at the darker memory of that night. The gunfire, the blood, the fear. He shook his head. "Boone's trial finished last week. 15 years. Should give the animals some peace." Caleb nodded, though his gaze drifted toward the ridge. "Peace isn't something you find," he said. "It's something you protect." Later that afternoon, when the clouds parted and the sun bathed silver, creek in gold, they climbed the hill to where Caleb had once kept watch. The air was alive with the sound of cicadas and the rustle of grass swaying under the weight of water. From there, they could see a small clearing, a place where Lucy used to rest. Suddenly, movement caught Caleb's eye. A flash of gold between the trees. His heart leapt. Through the binoculars, he saw her, Lucy, her coat gleaming wet, her gait steady despite the faint scar on her shoulder. Behind her trotted Grace and Hollow, larger now, their legs strong, their spots fading into smooth tan coats. The trio paused near a fallen log. Grace nuzzled Lucy's neck while Hollow gnawed clumsily at a branch. Caleb lowered the binoculars, a smile tugging at his lips. "They made it," he whispered. Maya raised her camera, capturing the moment, the leopard and her 2 deer beneath a rainbow breaking over the valley. For a long time they simply watched, saying nothing. Lucy lifted her head, as though sensing the distant eyes upon her. She turned toward them, calm and regal, the wild queen of Silver Creek. Her gaze lingered on Caleb, and for a fleeting moment, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, trust, perhaps even gratitude. Then she turned away, nudging the fawns gently before vanishing into the forest's emerald depths. That evening, under the fading light, Maya uploaded the photographs from her camera. The headline for her story glowed on her laptop screen. "The Leopard Who Chose Love Over Hunger." The article would go viral within days, spreading across America and beyond. Wildlife organizations would reference it in lectures and conservation campaigns. Children in classrooms would draw Lucy beside the words, "Love has no species." But in that moment, as dusk settled over the valley, Caleb wasn't thinking of headlines or fame. He sat beside Maya, watching the fireflies flicker among the reeds. "It's strange," he said. "We came here to study survival, but Lucy taught us something deeper." Maya tilted her head. "And what's that?" "That sometimes," he replied, eyes distant and full of wonder, "the wild remembers what it means to be kind long after we've forgotten." The rain began again, gentle and cleansing. Somewhere in the forest, a low purr echoed faintly through the trees, an ancient lullaby of life beginning anew. Sometimes miracles don't descend from the heavens wrapped in light. They rise quietly from the ashes, cloaked in fur and dust. Lucy, a creature born of instinct, reminded us of something humanity too often forgets: that compassion is not bound by form, by reason, or by species. In her act of love, the wild reflected the divine, proof that God's grace still breathes through creation, even where cruelty once ruled. Every sunrise over Silver Creek now whispers that same truth. Love is stronger than hunger, mercy deeper than instinct. And if a leopard can choose kindness, perhaps so can we, in traffic, at work, in how we treat the lost, the weak, the different. God's miracles are not always grand. Sometimes they are quiet choices made in ordinary moments, when a heart, against all odds, decides to love. May God bless every soul who believes that love still changes the world. If this story touched you, share it. Let someone else be reminded that grace is real. Leave a comment with where you're watching from and tell us if you've ever witnessed a little miracle in your own life. And before you go, subscribe, so together we can keep telling stories where faith, nature, and love walk hand in hand. May God bless you and those you hold dear.